Yo soy Martin, but I do not speak Spanish, so oh, I have to turn on the captions. So this should help you. Does it work? Oh yes. So this should help you, but you cannot see it anyway.
Oh, ya, vamos a dar la transcripción en la parte de abajo de la. Bueno.
Hay una transcripción justo abajo de los slides. Yo me puedo parar.
What's happening?
Cada vez que hago lo que diga
We're trying to
Martín,
get everyone to see
va a
that.
salir abajito transcrito, no traducido, transcrito. ¿Y cuál
Va a ser
es?
transcrito, no traducido.
¿Cuál es el que
Sí, el acento es difícil. Go ahead.
Okay. So again, hello everyone. I'm Martin, and I'm from a little country in Europe, from Czech Republic, and I'm really interested. Who knows Czech Republic? Who knows Czech Republic? Wow, it's like two on the map. So it's a small red country. We have about 10 million citizens, or 10 million Czech people living there. So just like in Lima. And I work for kiwi.com. And we do this small website where you have on the right side map, and on the left side you have basically search engine for flight tickets. And it's pretty unique, but I'm not here to sell you our product. I'm just trying to give you the context what I work for. So what we do is we basically search flight tickets, but currently we also sell buses and trains, and eventually we will sell everything that helps you to travel, which is pretty cool. And so if you would like to go from Lima to Brno, which is our headquarters, then you can find it pretty easily, and we will get you there. And the cool part about the service is that we offer guarantee, which means that if you lose connection, then we will get you there anyway. Because the problem is that not every airline cooperates together. So for example, in this case, Norwegian and EasyJet, they don't work together, they don't like each other. But we said, no, you are going to work together. But the problem is that if you miss the connection, then you miss the connection. But we will get you there anyway. And some quick facts. Can you read it? Oh yes. Why is this dead?
Reconnecting to AirPlay.
Okay, I will reconnect to AirPlay. Turn off AirPlay. Turn on AirPlay. Es no posible. And huh? It just takes a long time? Yes? No? Okay. Now I will try. Okay, so you all sit here anyway, and you guys, I will try it. Could not connect to the Apple TV. Never mind. So, quick fact, we do about 10,000 bookings per day. And we do about 95 million searches per day, which is a lot. And yeah, there is some pretty huge turnover last year. This year is probably gonna be doubled. And the company is not that small, as you can see. We have quite a lot of developers and even more core employees, which are mostly our customer support, which is also a very important part of our company. And we have offices all around Europe, which is in Brno, Prague, Barcelona, in Split, Zagreb, and Belgrade. Come on, work. Cool. So now to the real presentation. So imagine that you're going to build a startup today. You're going to do something really life-changing, and let's say I will guarantee you that your startup is going to be really successful. And we are talking about success in scale of, let's say, Google, Facebook, or even Kiwi.com. And my question is, what technologies would you use in order to build your JavaScript frontend? What libraries or what techniques would you use in order to build this scalable frontend or this client if you know that it's going to be successful and it's going to be here for quite a while? It's not very easy question to answer, so I will try to help you with that. Just think about it for a few seconds and I will help you with that. Before we start, let's have a look at this startup. So it's pretty obvious that it's 2018, so you should probably have a mobile application. So yes, mobile application is very important, and I'm a React developer, so I'm interested. Who is React developer? Oh, not so many. Okay, so what are you doing? Okay. So since I'm a React developer, once again? Okay, so since I'm a React developer, then I would build this application in React Native, which is not the crucial technology yet, just so you know. But it's a startup, so you're probably going to need like a tablet version as well, which is basically a mobile application, but the layout is a little bit different. There are some differences which are pretty important. So it's not really a mobile application, but you can work with mobile application and transform it to a bigger layout. And you are going to need a website as well. Maybe your product is not going to face customers like our product, but you are going to have back office systems anyways. So you're going to need mobile, tablet, and website. So that's a good start, and let's build this startup. Let's build this application, and let's build the mobile application first. So this is my demo application, where it's just a history of all payments, and you cannot see it very clearly, but it's basically an overview of all the payments that happened in past. You can see their name of the customer, you can see their price, date, and you can see the payment status. So pretty simple, nothing special. Now, I told you that you're going to need a website as well. And I would like to build the website on the right side. It's not very nice, just for the demo purposes, but that's not important. Now, if you look at it, it looks pretty similar. And this is on purpose. You have the name there, the date, the price, and the payment statuses. Now, it is pretty similar because, well, I'm building a product, and my product should somehow be, you should recognize the mobile application and website. It's just one product. So yes, they are similar. And it would be really nice if I could take one part from one platform and use it in the other platform, right? Because let's be honest, reusability is good. There is no doubt about it. So it would be really interesting to, let's say, take this row from my mobile application and use it in the browser. So let's have a look how this could work. So I told you I'm a React developer. So first obvious thing would be to build website in React and to build mobile application in React Native. The thing is that when you do this, then you basically write two applications in one way how to build this application. So let's have a look at the mobile version first. Now, from this screen, this is typical React code, nothing complicated. From this screen, you should not be able to tell me whether this is written for React or for browser. Even though I'm using here, let's say, the view, the text, which is well known in React Native world, then you don't see the imports, you don't see the surroundings. So at the end of the day, you cannot tell me for what platform I wrote this code. And this is the crucial idea, because if I can abstract my ideas into React code like this, then I can take this code and I can run it in a mobile, and I can run it even in browser, because why not, right? I just change the implementation of views for divs, and here we go. And this is exactly what is my first technology I consider to be really the game-changing in the future, and it is called React Native Web. It's not React Native, it's not React, it's React Native Web. And React Native Web enables me to do this. Enables me to write this one code and run it basically everywhere, but natively. So I can run it on iOS devices with 60 FPS. I can run it in a browser like a normal HTML. And of course, I can do the optimizations for the platform. So if I return back to the screen, you can see that the layouts are different, a little bit different, right? Because, for example, the layout for the mobile application is very specific. There is this navigation, which works completely differently on mobile devices. There is this header. On the other hand, in a website, I have completely different way how to navigate user in the browser. And you can see that the layout is a little bit different. The name is at the bottom. The colors are different. But believe me, the code is basically the same. I just did the platform tweaks there. So I just said, if I'm on the web, just use different color, use different layout, but the code is basically this. One important thing to how to achieve this is to use platform-independent styles. So we do write styles in this way, which is basically React Native, and this allows me to take this JavaScript object and just build CSS from it. You're basically doing it anyway, except it looks a little bit differently in form of, let's say, styled JSX or styled components, where you write the string, which is being transformed into object anyway. So this is how we do it. And if you are really interested into this, I can show you how does it work with the different platforms, with the differences. So the first technology is React Native Web. But when you build this application, it's not only about the layout and about the React components, is it? It's also about the data requirements of your application. So let's go back and let's have a look at the application again. It's a little bit blurry, but should be pretty clear. So I have my row here, okay, in my application. And this row contains name, price, city, date, or whatever is necessary in order to render one row. And those are my components with different styles. And this is how I compose them. You saw it in the React example. Now the whole screen contains many rows. So I have to take this component and iterate it in order to render this list, right? And so if you look at it from the bigger perspective, then you have the screen with all the payments, which contains the bottom navigation, the list, the header, and each list contains many rows, and each row contains components for name, price, and city. Now, this is how the structure of React component works. But if you look at this from really high perspective, then I also described here my data requirements, right? I basically said that if I want to render the payment list, I'm going to need all the data for payment row. And if I want to render payment row, I need data for name, I need price, I need a city. So the data requirements are essentially the same as my structure of React components. They have tree structure. And it would be really nice to somehow work with data this way. And this is why I consider GraphQL to be the second key technology that you should be already using. And if you are not using it already, then start today, because it's super important. So yes, GraphQL for the win. And so who is using GraphQL already? Okay, that's 1, 2, 3. I would say like, okay, let's half of you. The rest of you start. If you don't like GraphQL for some personal reasons, there are alternative implementations. It's not only about the GraphQL, it's about the idea. We like GraphQL, we use GraphQL, I think GraphQL is really good, but you can have a look at Falcor, for example, from Netflix. So yes, GraphQL for the win. And so that's the second technology. And I also introduced the third technology, which is Relay. We use Relay in order to handle the GraphQL queries. And I'm going to show you a few examples to understand how does it actually work. So this is one row in my mobile application or in the website or whatever. Now, you know that this row is composed of the components, and this is how we describe the data requirements for each component. So in order to render the status icon, I need to fetch status from the server. Now the syntax may be a little bit weird. It's not important. This is how Relay works. But what I want to explain you here is that you should always fetch or write the data requirements next to the component, and you should always fetch only what you need for the component. So when you write the React code, then you write the styles for the component in the same file, and you write the data requirements in the same file. And there is nothing else. It just encapsulated status component with everything. Now you will get it. Why is it so important? But this is example of the so this was payment status. It's only the failed or success, right? And this fragment is for the whole row. Now, in this example, you need to fetch location, you need to fetch data, you need to fetch some information about the retailer, but you also need to fetch the status because you are going to render the status, right? And the important thing here is that I'm not fetching the status field here. No, I'm just saying that I'm going to need to render the status icon, and I'm leaving this responsibility up to Relay. So Relay will take care of managing all these fragments together and sending the right request. So if it's still not clear, I will show you the last example, which is for the whole list. Okay, this component basically renders the whole list, and again, I'm just describing here my data requirements. And as you can see, I'm not fetching here name, city, date. I'm not doing it because this is not responsibility of this component. I'm just writing here that I'm going to need to render the payment row, and I'm leaving the responsibility of fetching the data up to Relay. And this is a super important concept because this way you can create really encapsulated components that are very easy to maintain in a large scale. If you have thousands and thousands of components written this way, it's very easy to get used to it, it's very easy to organize it and to understand it. I believe, yes. So those were three first main technologies, which is React Native Web, GraphQL, and Relay, which helps us to bound these two concepts together. Now, do you have any questions at this moment, which I should explain? Should I explain something a little bit more, or is it clear? Preguntas. Okay, just a quick misunderstanding. Later we will have proper questions, but now, because I'm moving to something else, so what was your question?
How do you manage the performance on Android and the styles of every platform?
Yes. Well, yeah. This is more question to React Native, as it is. You just write React Native code, and if you need to do platform differences, then you do the platform differences, and it's a responsibility of React Native to run the application natively, how it should be run. So if you run it on iOS, then you use the native iOS views. If you run it on Android, the abstraction is being transferred to Android views, which I don't know the real names of the classes or whatever is used there.
Another related question. Related to that, did you ever have any problem with our performance while writing your applications using those technologies?
Not yet, not serious ones. We are not, to be honest, we are not using it everywhere, and it's still because we have many native developers, and the React Native parts are not so big. But at the same time, I think what is performance problem, honestly, because if the application is slow, okay, but we are delivering a product here. So yes, we have 60 FPS and maybe something is slow, but if you look at it at the end, our API is even slower. We are not responding in 10 milliseconds. We are responding in hundreds of milliseconds. It's even for the web. It's like even the web is not super fast. We are dealing with the performance, of course, but if you build such a big company with such a huge product, then you have to focus on the product first, and make it work, make it good after that. So I would say that we are not that focused on a super good performance at this moment, but at the same time we know that is easily doable. It's like in React. If you have slow React, what do? Optimize it, but don't do it at the very beginning. So I will move on, and let's have a discussion after that. What I really like about doing these talks is not the talk itself, but the talk is just a conversation starter. So if you want to talk about it, the right time is after that, or somewhere in a pub. So let's talk about code health. Because if you have a large code base, then it's not only about the code you write, but it's also about how the code is good, whether you have bugs there, whether you follow some rules. And I will give you one example of what I mean. So can you spot an error here? It's not a syntax error. Yes?
There might be, it's possible that ID is undefined.
Everything is defined. Don't worry about that. Everything is defined, and there is no syntax error.
I think part of the finding.
Everything is defined. Every variable is defined.
What about if you're expecting key to be an integer?
It's not a problem. No, don't worry about it. Don't worry. Okay, it was not very nice from me, because you actually cannot find the error. I did the example because of that. That's my point. The error is in this property, in the property data. And I'm sorry for that. It was not very nice. But I'm going to help you with that. Well, actually, not me. We have tools for this. And the tool that we use to spot these errors is called Flow. So this is super tiny and super blurry, so I will help you to understand the error. But basically, if I would do this error in my application, then I would get this error message, which is real what I did. And there are two kinds of error messages, so I will try to help you understand them. So it's basically two error messages, but it's one error message written twice, so you can understand it more easily. So the first row says that property data is missing in object 1, which is here, which is something I don't really understand, but whatever, but exists in props 2, which is here. So in other words, property data is missing somewhere, but it exists there. Or I can say differently, the second version. Property payment is missing here, in props 2, but exists somewhere else. So in other words, I'm using property data, but I should not use property data, and I should use property payment, but it's missing there. So basically, the property data you saw here should be called payment. And the reason why I did this example is that if you don't know the context of the application, if you didn't write the payment row component, if you don't know the surroundings of the application, then you cannot really understand what is happening here. And even I don't remember that I did this mistake. And it's super easy to do these mistakes when you do large-scale refactorings. You just, rename something, move something, and suddenly your components doesn't work, or your props are false. So use Flow in order to catch these errors. And so there's a fourth very, very important technology, especially in large applications. And the last technology is not so surprising. It's of course related to testing, because you have to test your applications. And maybe with the small applications, it's not such a big deal because you build the application, deliver it. But if you are building a startup and it's really going to be here even in 5-10 years, and it's going to grow into thousands and thousands of components, this is super crucial. And we use Jest, which is the last part. And we use Jest because it's fast. We like the API, and we can do some crazy stuff with it. But I'm going to show you one example of my favorite feature in Jest, which is this. And again, you cannot see it very well. So basically, what this test does is it takes link component, which is normal component. It's my abstraction of the link, and it renders the component, and then there is written except the rendered component to match inline snapshot. Now the nice part is that I wrote only half of this test because I'm comfortable programmer. So what Jest does is it takes the output from the rendered link and it actually writes it for me there. So when I ran it for the first time, the test changes. So Jest effectively wrote a test for me, and it writes these lines. So when I run this test for the second time, then Jest again takes the link component. It will try to render the link component, and it will try to compare it with the snapshot I already have. And you can have it inline like this, which is pretty handy, or you can have it in a disk. I would like to stress here though that you should use these kind of these kind of tests only for small outputs. So let's say for the small component like link, perfect. For small objects, for arrays, small arrays, perfect. But don't use it for large outputs, like for example the payment list. You could snapshot it and save it and be happy, but you realize that eventually these tests are pretty shitty, and when you change something in the link, for example, then you have thousands of broken tests just because the tests are not good. So use it only for small outputs like this, for example. This is how it looks in real life. It's not that blurry though. On the right side, you can see this is the diff you would get. This is the diff you would get if the link implementation changed and you got a different output. So it will show you what you were expecting and what should be there. And this is how it looks like when you run it on your CI server. So as you cannot see, there are a lot of tests, but it takes just a few seconds to run hundreds and hundreds of tests in parallel, of course. You have to use many cores in order to speed up your feedback. So test pyramid. Is it better?
It's an airplane.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm almost at the end of the presentation. So who is familiar with test pyramid? Test pyramid? Nobody? Come on, guys. Yes, good. Okay, so for those who are not familiar, I will try to explain you this concept because even though the tool is important, and this concept is maybe even more important, this pyramid basically explains you that you should write many unit tests. The reason for that is that these tests are very easy to write, very easy to maintain, and very fast to run. So you can have millions of these tests, and you will get a response very easily and very quickly. Of course, the problem is that they are testing only small bubbles of your application. So the other extreme is those are so-called UI tests, and this kind of test where you basically automatically open kiwi.com and the bot is starting to click on the elements on the website like a normal user, and it tests whether, for example, the pop-up pops up. That's also very important. The problem with these tests is that they're relatively easy to write, but it's very hard to maintain them, and it's very expensive to run them because they are very flaky, very slow. So you should not have like majority of them. I would actually recommend only test the critical business path of your application, which you should know. It's like when you write when you do eShop, for example, or eShop, then you should probably use it for the order process, for example, because it's very important for your business. Now, it is possible to move some tests into the service layer. Those are like integration tests, let's say, that are testing some units together, so you know that even the units work together, because it's not sufficient to write only unit tests. And the nice part about Jest is that you can use it from the bottom of the pyramid up until here. I would not recommend it to use it for UI tests, even though someone told me it is possible. We are not doing that. There are way better tools for this, like for example Cypress.io. So we use Cypress. It's not only about your code. You should not test only what you wrote there. You should also test your ideas. I think this is also very important. So, for example, we do have a very specific structure of our project, and the structure is important for the project to work. So we wrote tests for basically the directory structure. So when someone comes into the code base, they cannot do a mistake in, I don't know, writing package JSON. We have tests for package JSON. So because again, it's very important. It's not really a code, is it? It's just a JSON. But it's important to write the JSON properly, so everything in our company works well. And this is also important because of one concept I will show you in a minute. But before I do so, I would like to do a small recapitulation. So I showed you React Native Web. React Native Web is a way how to write basically one React Native code that is able to be executed on iOS devices, on Android devices natively, and also in a browser. We actually met some guys from other companies, like for example PlayStation, and they use the same technique to write code for their PlayStation consoles, for Windows 7, Windows 10, whatever. It's just an abstraction. And you should use GraphQL because this is what you want. You describe what your components want and you just fetch them from the server. And we use Relay in order to bound these two concepts together. It works very well together. Now, it's not only about the code. You have to use some tooling around. So I recommend you to use Flow plus some lints. And for testing, I recommend you to use Jest. And this way you can build really big applications that will last. Here's one highly opinionated bonus that I think it's very valid, but not everyone agrees with me, and we are not using it that heavily yet. So, did you know that the biggest players are storing their code, basically all their code, in one repository, like Google, Facebook, for example? I think this is pretty important or pretty interesting concept if you look at their scale, if you look at their numbers. And I will give you a small example of the situation we have at our company. So, we have about 350 developers, but the real number of our repositories we are maintaining is more than 1,000. In other words, we have more Git repositories than developers taking care of them. I think this is a little bit dangerous, but in our scale, it's not such a big issue yet. And what we are trying to do now is we are trying to build some smaller monorepos. And I hope they will eventually become a big monorepo, because the benefits are, for us, pretty obvious. You can write, you can do one setup of Flow, and you can run it for everything you have. And You can do large-scale refactorings, whatever. But yeah, we have to have some tooling around, so we are ramping up a little bit slowly because the tooling is very important in this scenario, and it's not that easy to do it. So just think about it, and I would really recommend you to start using it from today. Just do not create second repository. There's no sense. Just folders work, okay? Folders are the same as Git repositories, except you don't have separated setups. Just use folders, please. And I believe that is all from my side. And now, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
So, ¿alguna pregunta?
Yeah, I have a question. It's really difficult to implement CI process using one project for two different environments.
It is not. Not today. It used to be difficult, but we use GitLab for all our code, and we use GitLab CI. And the nice feature in GitLab CI is, for example, that you can run only half of your application. So let's say you have two folders with front-end and back-end. So you can set up the CI so that when you change something in back-end folder, then only the back-end is being run, or the jobs that are related to back-end. So you can do this. And what we did, for example, is we use Yarn workspaces, which it helps us to have like many repositories inside our one repository, and we do some deployments. Like let's say we have 10 npm packages, and they're automatically being deployed, tested, but we use them in the application, of course. And what we have now is that when I change one file somewhere in our application, then there is this algorithm that looks at the file, and it can figure out which parts of the application should be tested and which parts of the application are not necessary to be tested because they are not affected.
Smart testing, like a smart testing.
Smart testing? What is smart testing?
When you analyze some parts are really important.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is smart testing. Yeah, of course. We use it now. We wrote it on our own because Jest is not smart enough for monorepositories. It supports monorepositories, but not as we wish. So, but the tooling is getting better every day. So, I hope I will eventually delete these 100 lines of algorithm, and that's it.
But do you have any special tool like Rails? Do you recommend
Once again,
CI or simple CI?
well, we use GitLab CI, so we don't really need anything else, and we have our own runners there. So we are able to scale the workers that do the testing on our own. On the other hand, we do have some open source projects, and we don't run open source tests. Not all open source tests are being run in our GitLab CI, so I would recommend Circus CI for this. And the reason for that is that you can use your own Docker images, which in case of Travis CI you cannot, or at least we were not able 1 year ago. So just fuck it. We need our custom Docker images. So Circus CI is definitely a good way to go, and you can test there even iOS devices. They have Mac machines. They have Apple servers.
I have a question. I think that we are talking about having big stories that also. Have you heard of Prettier, which helps us with the style?
Once again, the name?
Prettier.
Prettier. Oh, we use Prettier.
Yeah. Would you add it to your type of recommendations?
Well, I could add many technologies, but I don't think it's crucial because we do have. Well, do use it. Everyone should be using it, but you can write the code without it because we have ESLint rules, and if you write shitty code, then ESLint rule will tell you no, don't do this. If you want to save your time, use Prettier. It just honestly, who the fucks care about how the code looks like? This is responsibility of Prettier. You should be focusing on your algorithms, on your ideas. Nobody cares about spaces or tabs. Nobody cares about whatever in the code. Honestly, just focus on what is your job. Your job is not doing enters, or your job is to write code. Don't focus on double quotes. Nobody cares. You're wasting your time. So yeah, use Prettier.
Another question. Sí, pueden preguntar. Yo traduzco.
So okay, if you don't have any other questions, I'm here all day long. So just stop me, and I would be happy to talk about how you do it or how should we do it differently. Okay, thanks. Stop. Yes.
So, hola, wow. Supuestamente esto está funcionando, pero tuvimos que improvisar un micrófono. De hecho, tenemos como 5 minutos de brunch, porque en verdad mientras seteamos la siguiente charla, que va a ser la de Cristian. Así que si puedes, por favor. Sí, nos vemos en 5 minutos para la gente del stream.